Written over 2,000 years ago, Titus Lucretius' Carus epic poem expresses completely modern notions. For example, empiricism, a theory of atoms, a theory of evolution, the notion of prehistory, and Epicureanism's morality and psychology. Helping to ignite the Renaissance, it is considered most important. On this video, you may learn details about a section of this epic poem. Lucretius on Nature, Book 5, Big Bang, Evolution, and Prehistory. This book begins with a great praise to the unspecified thinker, philosopher, that discovered or theorized the things Lucretius has been explaining. No doubt, he is referring to Epicurus. He also references the intended reader he mentioned in the first book. Consider.
Hear me, illustrious Mimius, a god, who found out the plan of life, which now is called philosophy.
This is to introduce a criticism of religious myth. Yes, the poet proceeds to mention various details of Greco-Roman mythology, all to say that they are incredulous and nonsensical. For example, it is said that the feats of Heracles, the destruction of all those beasts, is not superior to what the philosopher has done. Heracles may have killed some monsters, but the earth still has many dangerous creatures. Conversely, speaking of how the philosopher has subjugated the likes of pride, greed, laziness, and unhappiness and debauchery.
Should we not dignify him to rank among the gods?
All the prior is to segue into a discussion of how the myths are not real, and how belief in them may be dispelled from humanity. The first piece or step in doing so involves demystifying the heavens, the night sky. Yes, as the simple-minded deify the stars and planets, it must be explained that these are material like the things here on earth. There is a mention of how people who say as he has, that there are no deities in the sky, are considered deserving of only the worst punishments. Lucretius indicates that objects such as the clouds, oceans, or trees have no consciousness, so too must be the likes of stars and the planets. In the same manner, it is argued that there are no gods here on earth. The poet says,
Indeed, the nature of the gods, so subtle, so far removed from these our senses, scarce, is seen even by intelligence of mind. For what may not itself be touched in turn can never touch.
That is to say that the gods, if there are any, are surely not like in the myths. What is more, that man may not as if affect their behavior or interact with them. It is ridiculous to suppose that supreme beings should change reality for the sake of mere mortals, LOL. In fact, reference is made to how our existence itself, our being alive, cannot be viewed as a boon or gift from any divinity. After all,
what the evil for us, if we had never been born? Whoso never hath tasted love of life, and never was in the count of living things, what hurts it, him that he was never born?
Of course, either by implication or explicitly, it is said that being alive is only worth the trouble if life be pleasant, a most curious truth that most humans seem to be unable to recognize. Issue is raised on the possible causal chain of creator and created. It is said that deities could not have as if known what to create out of nowhere. Rather, the existence of things, as they are, must be itself predicated by the matter out of which all is created. Thus, it is as if nature itself, alone, would be worthy of the title God, an unresponsive, unconscious God. The philosopher puts emphasis on how nature does not seem to have created a world for humans. Instead, the world is harsh and difficult. Humans, in fact, have a very tough time surviving the world. Thus, the world as themselves simply happens to be
like castaways of the raging surf, naked, homeless, speechless, in want of every help for life, when nature first hath poured us forth.
Surely these are harrowing things to consider, LOL. The topic now changes to argue that the world, existence, or the universe is not eternal. That is, that it had a beginning, and that it must, it is deduced, have an end. The first proof is that
So all birth and perishable frame, thus the whole nature of the world itself, must be conceived as perishable too.
I would like to note that in the prior lies a rich aphoristic gem. The argument does become more thorough. First, the poet explains how nothing ever remains the same. Rather, all is ever changing. The ground, of course, is turned to dust or vapor by sunlight and,
A vast throng of feet.
likewise, water evaporates and perhaps even becomes earth. It is surprising how Lucretius understands that there is flow of water beneath the earth that as if secretly feeds the flows of rivers. Either way, air and fire may also change and feed each other. Herein an erroneous understanding of the sun ensues. It is said that it must be fed by air, but the details are expounded more thoroughly later on. For the time being, the observation is made that rock, even if sculpted to the shape of a god, withers, crumbles, and collapses with time.
The holy influence hath yet no power there to postpone the terminals of fate, or headway make against nature's fixed decrees.
The same is said of heroes, humans, and their monuments. Either way, the recycling of matter, the foundations of existence, is taken as proof that things must have had a beginning. At the very least, it is argued, there must have been a time before things came into the form and shape that they currently are. Otherwise, the poet indicates history would be infinite, whereas in fact it is ever-changing and progressing.
Wherefore, even now some arts are being still refined, still increased, now unto ships is being added many a new device.
As for the possible objection that history is, on occasion, erased by a calamity and thus humans begin their progress once again, Lucretius says that this possibility, if true, further proves that existence must have had a beginning and an end. The argument being that if the earth and sky could change so much so as to erase history, then the earth and sky must be perishable.
Whatever abides eternal must indeed either repel all strokes, or else be able to endure through time.
Only void, the absence of matter, says the philosopher, may be eternal. Subsequently, I must confess, the discussion grows obscure. The poet seems to make literal reference to existence as a possible conflict or battle between different forms of matter. This seems to all be but a tale, a myth, to say that no type of matter could have come first or always been. I repeat, at the beginning, there could only have been nothing itself, void. Whatever may be the meaning of the prior, the topic changes once again. Now it is to explain how everything came into being. I must confess, perhaps tainted by modern knowledge, I cannot avoid as if seeing a bit of Big Bang Theory in Lucretius' explanation. Yes, how things are now is but the result of chance. Things have been in many different manners before, and the current is but the coincidence of the present. At the beginning or near the beginning.
Nor aught of things like unto things of ours could then be seen, but only some strange storm, and a prodigious hurly-burly mass, compounded of all kinds of primal atoms.
This sounds to me like the condition a fraction of a second after the so-called Big Bang, if such a theory or hypothesis is in reality correct. As in modern theory, the ancient philosopher has all the particles separate and mixed to create different objects. He says that the first to come into a fixed mixture was Earth. It, due to being the first and being the heaviest, took position in the center of the world. Then he has water come second, then air, and lastly fire, which composes the sun. This is curious, as previously he said that the universe is infinite and therefore has no center. One must keep in mind that he surely wrote this work over many years, without any editing software, LOL. As for the shape of the globe, he does hold it to be a three-dimensional, round, object floating in empty space. Herein arises an attempt at explaining what amounts to gravity. He merely makes reference to a human being able to easily carry its own weight, but being burdened by foreign weight. That is, being burdened by carrying things that are much lighter than himself. Consider how he asks,
What power, in some, can raise with agile leap our body aloft, save energy of mind which steers the limbs?
It seems he believes that humans can carry themselves thanks to some powerful particle, the one that creates the mind. He imagines that something similar must take place with gravity, yet he does not delve for too long on this topic. Instead, he speaks of celestial bodies and how they move. He assumes that air, or something like it, exists in the outer realms, meaning something similar to the now debunked theory of ether. Either way, it is this substance whose wind pushes the celestial objects. Yet, Lucretius does not hold this hypothesis very sternly. Rather, he mentions other possible causes. At one point, briefly as in passing, he mentions that perhaps it is the earth that moves, while the celestial objects remain standing. Of course, many philosophers, such as Pythagoras, argued likewise. He does not know which possibility is correct and knows that he does not know. Consider these lines.
To assign unto the motions of the stars, even several causes which it is possible, exist throughout the universal all, of which yet one must be the cause even here, which mocketh motion for our constellations.
With the same doubt, most curiously, surprisingly, Lucretius does not know whether the moon shines or reflects sunlight. Yet, he does hold both, the sun and the moon, to surely be each smaller than Earth, lol. He explains how the small sun can shine so brightly by drawing an analogy to small water springs that seemingly never cease to flow. There is also uncertainty as to why the sun changes path, slightly, throughout the year. Meaning, he does not know about the Earth's inclined rotation. Herein he invokes Democritus, a presocratic philosopher that lived 400 years before. The argument is that objects farther from the center of rotation would have to move faster in order not to lose their alignment with objects nearer the center. Therefore, by small increments, the more distant stars misalign with the sun. I should note that it is important not to mock the 2,000-year-old poem. The poet and the philosophers lacked the society and institutions needed to gather the necessary premises for historically more advanced hypothesis. Nonetheless, the ignorance goes as far as uncertainty on whether the sun and moon travail under the earth or whether they are born anew. They might be frequently repeating natural phenomenon. The poet explains the possibility of the latter as he mentions many natural cycles that occur with great regularity. As might be imagined, the same doubt pertains to eclipses. This is curious as elsewhere, such as in Plutarch and Polybius, I have heard Anaximander's theory on eclipses discussed as facts. Yet, Lucretius is less committed. He mentions that perhaps eclipses are the moon covering the sun or the earth covering the moon, yet, he says, other causes are possible. Perhaps the moon as if rolls up onto itself, perhaps the sun grows weary of shining on certain occasions, perhaps there's a third, invisible, celestial object that shadows them. Again, I think most philosophers would have agreed with Anaximander, the present-day knowledge. And further, I personally commend any skepticism. Error only exists in certainty. The remaining book in Lucretius' poetic epic did not survive in its entirety. I will nonetheless make a video for it, but to encourage you to watch the final analysis and compilation video, consider the aphorism.
All that ever lives is invariably born to die.
If you enjoy or gain from my aphorisms, know that I have thousands. I will be writing books with short thematic essays composed out of aphorisms. These essays are profound and intriguing yet easy to read. For very cheap copies, look up Protagoras Pause in the Amazon website. I repeat, Protagoras Pause, that's my name.